I still remember the silence that followed. Not the kind that comes from peace, but the kind that crushes your lungs. The baby shower decorations hung like accusations. Blue and white balloons twisted in the wind from the open door. Everyone stared at me. At her. At the envelope in my hand. She had said she was carrying my child. For 7 months, I believed her. I painted the nursery pale yellow because she said it felt like hope. I read parenting books at 3 in the morning. I quit my dream job for something stable, something that could support a family. I became someone I didn't recognize, all because I loved her. Or maybe I loved the idea of us. But love built on lies doesn't stand. It crumbles. And I was holding the proof. Her face went white when I opened that envelope. The DNA test results. The ones she didn't know I'd taken. The ones that confirmed what my gut had been whispering for weeks. The baby she carried, the one she paraded on social media with hashtags and countdowns and gender reveal parties, wasn't mine. She reached for me. I stepped back. And in that moment, surrounded by strangers holding gifts and wearing frozen smiles, I realized something. I had been erased. Rewritten. Turned into a fool for her story. But tonight, I was taking my story back. She told me on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were our day. The day we met 3 years ago at that overpriced coffee shop where she ordered something with oat milk and lavender. I thought she was pretending to be sophisticated. Turns out, she was just pretending to be a lot of things. We were sitting on my couch. The same couch where we had our first real conversation, where she told me about her dreams of traveling the world, of writing a book, of living a life that mattered. The fabric was worn now, faded from too many nights of us curled up together watching movies we never finished because we were too busy talking about everything and nothing. She had been quiet all evening, which wasn't like her at all. Usually, she filled every silence with plans or complaints or stories I had heard twice before but never minded hearing again. Her voice was the soundtrack to my life. But that night, she just stared at her hands. They were folded in her lap, fingers intertwined like she was praying or holding something fragile that might slip away if she loosened her grip. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant sound of traffic outside, the rhythm of my own breathing growing more deliberate as I tried to read her face. Her expression was unreadable, like a book written in a language I had never learned. Then she said it. I'm pregnant. 3 words. Simple. Direct. Final. My entire world shifted on its axis. The room seemed to tilt, the walls closing in and expanding all at once. I felt my heartbeat in my throat, pounding so hard I thought she might hear it. Excitement crashed into terror, collided with confusion. All at once. A symphony of emotions playing out of tune. I asked her if she was sure. My voice came out smaller than I intended, like a child asking if the monster under the bed was real. She nodded slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a pregnancy test from her purse. It emerged like evidence, like proof of something monumental. 2 pink lines. Clear as day. Clear as the sky after a storm. Clear as the truth I wasn't ready to face. I stared at those lines. They were just color on plastic, but they represented everything. A future. A responsibility. A tiny human being who would depend on us for everything. On me. I didn't know what to say. The words caught in my throat like stones. We hadn't planned this. We weren't ready. We were barely stable on our own, 2 people still figuring out how to be adults, let alone parents. I was still freelancing, chasing photography gigs that paid just enough to cover rent and groceries. She was between jobs again, the 3rd time this year, always searching for something that felt right but never quite finding it. But she smiled at me. This soft, vulnerable smile I hadn't seen in months. It reminded me of the girl I met 3 years ago, the one who laughed at my terrible jokes and believed in my dreams when I didn't believe in them myself. The smile reached across the space between us like a bridge. We're going to be a family, she said. Her voice was gentle, almost pleading. I believed her. God help me, I believed her completely. I held her that night. Wrapped my arms around her like I could protect her from the world, from uncertainty, from everything that scared us both. Her head rested against my chest, and I could feel the warmth of her breath through my shirt. I made promises in the darkness. Whispered vows into her hair that smelled like vanilla and hope. I promised I would do better. Be better. Provide. Protect. I would become the man she needed. The father our child deserved. I would give up everything that didn't matter and focus on everything that did. My dreams could wait. My art could wait. This was real. This was what mattered. I didn't notice the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I didn't notice the slight tension in her shoulders, the way her body was there but somehow absent. I didn't notice the way she checked her phone 3 times before bed, the screen illuminating her face with a cold blue glow each time. I didn't notice the way she angled it away from me, protective, secretive. I didn't notice anything except the future I thought we were building. A house with a yard. A nursery painted in soft colors. Birthday parties and school plays and bedtime stories. A life that made sense. A life that mattered. That was my first mistake. Not the only one, but the first. The one that set everything else in motion. I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why she seemed relieved rather than scared. I should have paid attention to the details that didn't add up. But I was too busy building castles in the sky, too busy imagining a future that would never exist. Love makes you blind. Or maybe love makes you choose blindness. Maybe I saw the signs and decided to ignore them because the alternative was too painful to consider. Maybe I knew, even then, that something wasn't right. That the foundation we were building on was made of sand. But that night, holding her in the darkness, I let myself believe. I let myself hope. I let myself dream of a family that would never be mine. And somewhere in the quiet of that moment, as she fell asleep in my arms, the lie continued to grow. Not just the life inside her, but the deception that would eventually destroy us both. I changed everything. Within 2 weeks, I had applied to 6 corporate jobs. Stable jobs. Soul-crushing, dream-killing, boring jobs. The kind with health insurance and parental leave and retirement plans that stretched decades into a future I couldn't even imagine. The kind I swore I would never take, the kind my younger self would have mocked mercilessly. But that younger self didn't have a child on the way. That younger self didn't understand that dreams are luxuries you can afford only when you're alone. I gave up the photography project I had been working on for a year. It was supposed to be my breakthrough. A series on forgotten spaces in the city, abandoned buildings where nature was reclaiming concrete and steel. Gallery owners had expressed interest. One even mentioned a possible exhibition in the spring. It didn't matter anymore. None of it mattered. Dreams don't pay hospital bills. Dreams don't buy diapers or formula or the 1,000 things a baby needs. She started acting differently too. Softer. More affectionate. Like a switch had been flipped inside her. She would reach for my hand when we walked down the street, something she hadn't done in months. She would kiss me goodbye in the mornings, long and slow, like she was trying to memorize the taste of me. She started resting her hand on her stomach even though there was nothing to see yet. A protective gesture, maternal, tender. She would sit on the couch with her palm pressed flat against her abdomen, staring into space with a small smile playing at her lips. I would watch her from the kitchen, my heart swelling with something that felt like love but was probably just hope. She sent me articles about baby names throughout the day. Texts that would light up my phone during job interviews, during lunch breaks, during the quiet moments when I was trying not to panic about the future. Each name came with a story, a meaning, a reason why it might be perfect. She preferred names that meant strength or light or blessing. I preferred names that were simple, classic, easy to spell. She sent me links to nursery themes. Woodland creatures and celestial patterns and minimalist Scandinavian designs. She created Pinterest boards that I pretended to look at but never really understood. I didn't care about aesthetics. I cared about safety. About whether the crib met current standards, whether the paint was non-toxic, whether the changing table was sturdy enough. She posted a photo of the pregnancy test on social media. I didn't know she was going to do it. I was at a job interview when my phone started buzzing with notifications. The caption read, "Our greatest adventure begins." 3 words that mirrored the 3 words that had changed everything. She had filtered the photo, made it look vintage and romantic, like something from a movie about beautiful people living beautiful lives. The comments poured in immediately. "Congratulations. So happy for you both. You're going to be amazing parents. This is the best news. I'm crying. Blessings to your growing family." Heart emojis and prayer hands and baby bottles. People we hadn't spoken to in years suddenly reaching out, as if a pregnancy was an invitation to reconnect. Her high school friends. My college roommate. distant relatives who barely remembered our names. I felt proud. Terrified beyond measure, but proud. Like I had accomplished something significant just by existing in this moment. Like I was finally becoming someone worth knowing. She started asking for things. Small things at first. Prenatal vitamins, the expensive kind from the organic store. Special pillows designed for pregnancy, one for her back, one for between her knees, one for her neck. Doctor's appointments that always seemed to fall during my job interviews, appointments I couldn't attend because I was busy trying to secure the future she said we needed. Then bigger things. A new apartment. Somewhere safer, she said. Somewhere with space for a nursery. Our current place was too small, too run down, too close to the highway. She wanted something in a better neighborhood. Near good schools, even though our child wouldn't attend school for years. Near parks where we could take family walks. Near other families, other couples building the same dream. We moved within a month. I signed a lease I could barely afford, my hand shaking as I wrote out the deposit check. It took everything in my savings account and then some. My brother loaned me the rest. He didn't ask questions, just transferred the money and told me to pay him back whenever I could. I assembled furniture I didn't know how to build. IKEA instructions that might as well have been written in ancient Greek. I spent entire weekends with an Allen wrench in my hand, cursing under my breath, redoing sections I had put together backward. My back ached. My hands developed blisters. But I kept going because this was what fathers did. They built things. They created stability out of chaos. I painted walls the color she chose without asking if I liked it. A soft yellow that she said was cheerful but not overwhelming. Gender neutral, she said. Perfect for our little miracle. I painted 3 coats, making sure the coverage was even, that no streaks showed, that every corner was perfect. None of that mattered. My preferences, my exhaustion, my doubts. I was building a home. A future. A life for 3 instead of 2. She smiled more during those weeks. Touched me more. Let her hands linger on my shoulders when she passed behind me. Said I love you more often, the words floating through our new apartment like promises. I thought we were finally solid. Finally real. Finally the couple we had always pretended to be. But love shouldn't require proof. Love shouldn't need a reason or a crisis or a baby to make it real. And I was about to learn that the hard way. It started small, the way poison always does. A text message that came late at night while she was in the shower. I wasn't trying to invade her privacy. I was sitting on the bed, half watching television, half thinking about nothing, when I saw her phone light up on the nightstand. Just a name. Caleb. And a message that said, "Did you tell him yet?" The words burned themselves into my vision. I stared at the screen until it went dark, then continued staring at the black rectangle like it might offer answers. The sound of running water continued from the bathroom. She was singing softly, some song I didn't recognize. Did you tell him yet? For words that implied a secret. A conspiracy. Something I wasn't supposed to know. I didn't ask. I couldn't. Because asking meant acknowledging that something was wrong, and I wasn't ready to face that reality. I trusted her, I told myself. Or maybe I was just too afraid of the answer. Too afraid that the life we were building was constructed on lies. When she came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, water still dripping from her hair, I pretended to be engrossed in the television. She picked up her phone, glanced at it, and I watched from my peripheral vision as something flickered across her face. Not guilt exactly. Something more complicated. Relief maybe. Or calculation. Then came the doctor's appointments I still wasn't invited to. Every 2 weeks, then every week. She said they were routine. Boring. Just blood pressure checks and measurements. No need to waste my time, she said. I was busy with my new job anyway. The corporate position I had landed, the one with the gray cubicle and the fluorescent lights and the manager who spoke only in buzzwords. But when I suggested I take a day off to come with her, her reaction was immediate and sharp. She got defensive in a way that felt disproportionate to my simple offer. Said I was being controlling. That I didn't trust her. That pregnancy was hard enough without me hovering and questioning her every move. I backed off. Apologized even. Said I just wanted to be involved, to be a good partner, to support her. She softened then, kissed my forehead, said she knew and she appreciated me but she needed some things to be just hers. I told myself it made sense. Women's bodies change during pregnancy. Maybe she was self-conscious. Maybe she wanted privacy. Maybe I was being overbearing. She started going out more in the evenings. Girls' nights, she said. Pregnancy cravings with friends who understood what she was going through. She would come home late, sometimes after midnight, smelling like restaurant food and something else. Something that made my stomach clench. Cologne. Men's cologne that wasn't mine. A scent that was spicy and expensive and wrong. When I mentioned it, trying to keep my voice casual, she laughed. Actually laughed. Said I was paranoid. That pregnancy was making me anxious. That I was projecting my stress onto her. One of her friends had a boyfriend who wore too much cologne, she explained. They had all been crammed in a car together. Of course the smell transferred. The explanation was reasonable. Logical. I wanted to believe it. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe the stress of the new job and the new apartment and the impending fatherhood was breaking something in my brain. Making me see shadows where there was only light. But then I found the second phone. It was in her purse. I wasn't snooping. I need to make that clear, even now, even to myself. I was looking for my keys. She had borrowed my car the day before, and I needed to move it for street cleaning. Her purse was on the kitchen counter, and I asked if she had seen them. She was in the bedroom getting dressed. Just check my purse, she called out. So I did. And there, beneath her wallet and a tangle of receipts and a half-empty pack of gum, was a phone I had never seen before. Small. Cheap. A burner phone like something from a crime drama. The screen was locked, but I could see the notifications stacked up. Messages from Caleb. Photos I couldn't open. Heart emojis that glowed red against the black screen. My hands started shaking. I stood there in the kitchen holding this phone that represented everything I didn't want to know. The keys were in my pocket the whole time. I realized that later. I hadn't needed to check her purse at all. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. Buried it beneath the wallet and receipts. Tried to arrange everything the way it had been before my world shifted. I didn't confront her. I didn't know how. The words wouldn't form in my mind, let alone my mouth. What if I was wrong? What if there was a perfectly reasonable explanation? What if Caleb was a cousin or a childhood friend or someone completely innocent? What if I accused her and destroyed what we had over nothing? So I waited. And watched. And the pit in my stomach grew heavier every day, a weight that made it hard to breathe, hard to sleep, hard to pretend that everything was fine. She continued planning the nursery. Showed me fabric swatches for curtains. Asked my opinion on mobiles that would hang above the crib. Talked about what kind of parents we would be, what values we would instill, what kind of life we would give our child. Our child. I clung to those words. Our child. But doubt had planted its seed, and it was growing faster than the baby inside her. Something was wrong. I felt it in my bones, in the way she wouldn't meet my eyes for too long, in the way she kept her phone face down at all times now, in the way she flinched when I touched her stomach. I just didn't know how wrong yet. Didn't know that the truth would be worse than any nightmare I could imagine. But I would find out soon. Because lies, no matter how carefully constructed, eventually crumble under their own weight. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The late nights that smelled like someone else. The second phone hidden like evidence of a crime. The way she flinched when I touched her stomach, as if my hands didn't have the right to feel the life growing there. The way she said our baby but looked away when she said it. I needed proof. Not accusations built on suspicion. Not arguments fueled by paranoia. Proof. Something concrete and undeniable. Something that would either confirm my fears or prove me wrong so I could finally sleep again. So I called my brother. It was 3 a.m. when I dialed his number, sitting in my car outside our apartment building because I couldn't bear to be near her while I asked the question that would change everything. He answered on the 5th ring, voice thick with sleep. This better be important. It is, I said. And then I asked him something I never thought I would ask anyone. How do I prove a baby is mine before it's born? The silence on the other end stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Then he sighed. A deep, heavy sound that told me he understood exactly what I was asking and why. He worked in a lab. Medical research. He didn't ask questions, didn't make me explain. Just told me what I needed. A DNA test. But I would have to wait until the baby was born, he said. Unless I could get a sample now. Is that possible? My voice was a whisper, like speaking louder would make this real in a way I wasn't ready for. It's possible, he said. Then he told me about non-invasive prenatal paternity tests. They existed. Science had advanced to the point where you could determine paternity with just a blood sample from the mother. The baby's DNA floated in her bloodstream. All I needed was access to that blood. They're expensive, he warned me. And you have to be sure you want to know. I'm sure, I said. But I wasn't. Not really. Because knowledge is a door that only opens one way. I did research. Spent hours on websites with clinical language and privacy policies and testimonials from people whose lives had been destroyed by 3 simple letters. DNA. The building blocks of truth. I ordered a kit online. It arrived in a plain box with no identifying marks, like pornography or drugs or anything else people want to keep secret. I hid it in my car, in the trunk under the spare tire where she would never think to look. The instructions were simple. Clinical. Detached. I needed a blood sample from her. Just a vial. The kit would do the rest. Send it to the lab. Wait for results. Learn the truth that would either save me or destroy me. But how do you get blood from someone without them knowing? How do you betray someone while telling yourself it's not really betrayal because you're seeking the truth? I waited until one of her doctor's appointments. The ones I still wasn't allowed to attend. The ones that happened every week now, sometimes twice a week. She said the doctor was being cautious because of her blood pressure. I followed her. Stayed 3 cars back like in the movies. Watched her walk into the medical building in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Waited 15 minutes, then went inside. The office was on the 3rd floor. OB/GYN services. The waiting room was full of pregnant women in various stages, some glowing, some exhausted, all of them existing in that strange space between who they were and who they were becoming. I told the receptionist I was there for my partner. Gave her name. Said I wanted to surprise her. The receptionist smiled, said how sweet, asked me to wait. When the nurse called me back, I explained that I wanted to do something special. A keepsake. One of those services that saves cord blood or makes jewelry from breast milk or any of the other strange beautiful things people do to commemorate birth. I needed a small blood sample, I said. Just a vial. For the company I was working with. The lie came so easily it scared me. The nurse thought it was romantic. She prepared the vial, labeled it, handed it to me in a small biohazard bag. She didn't ask for identification or verification. She just trusted that I was who I said I was and that my intentions were pure. I thanked her. Left before my girlfriend came out of her examination. Drove home with the vial in my pocket, warm against my leg like a secret made flesh. I sent the sample to the lab that night. Express shipping. Paid extra for expedited processing. Then I waited. 2 weeks. 14 days of pretending everything was fine. Of smiling at baby shower invitations that arrived in the mail with cheerful fonts and pastel colors. Of nodding when she talked about names we would never use. Of dying inside every time she touched me, every time she said I love you, every time she talked about our future. I went through the motions. Went to work. Came home. Ate dinner. Made love to her in the darkness and hated myself for still wanting her despite everything. For hoping against hope that the test would prove me wrong. The results came back on a Thursday. 2 weeks to the day after I sent the sample. I was sitting in my car during lunch break when the email arrived. The subject line was simple. Paternity test results enclosed. My hands shook so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I read the email 3 times because the words didn't make sense the first time or the second time. Only on the 3rd reading did the truth settle into my bones like ice. The baby wasn't mine. Probability of paternity, 0%. The report was clinical, detached, just numbers and percentages and scientific certainty. But those numbers meant everything. They meant the past 7 months had been a lie. That the future I was building was built on sand. That the child I had already started to love wasn't mine to love. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my corporate job and felt nothing. Then felt everything. Then felt nothing again. The test results were in my hand. Proof. Undeniable and scientific and real. Now I just had to decide what to do with the truth. She planned the whole thing with the precision of someone orchestrating their own mythology. A garden party in her best friend's backyard. White tents that billowed in the early autumn breeze. String lights wrapped around tree branches like captured stars. A cake shaped like a baby bottle, 3 tiers of vanilla and raspberry, topped with fondant rattles and booties. She invited everyone. Her friends from college, from work, from yoga classes she attended twice before losing interest. My family. All of them. My mother, my brother, my aunts who still sent me birthday cards with $5 inside. Coworkers I barely knew. Neighbors from our new apartment building who probably couldn't pick me out of a lineup. She wore a white dress. Flowy and ethereal. The fabric caught the light as she moved, making her look like something from a painting. Everyone said she glowed. Everyone said she looked beautiful. Everyone said we were blessed. She did glow. I'll give her that. Whatever else was happening, whatever lies she was living, she looked radiant. Her skin clear. Her hair shining. Her smile wide and genuine, or at least convincing enough to fool everyone who mattered. I stood beside her and smiled. The supportive partner. The excited father-to-be. I held her hand. I thanked people for gifts I would never use. Onesies in sizes meant for someone else's child. Board books with cheerful illustrations. A diaper genie that seemed unnecessarily complicated. A stroller that cost more than my first car. I played the part perfectly. Because what else could I do? Tell everyone the truth right there? Announce that the guest of honor was a liar and I was a fool? Not yet. I had a different plan. In my pocket, I carried the envelope. The test results. Printed on official letterhead. Laminated so they couldn't be torn or smudged or destroyed. I had carried them everywhere for the past 3 weeks. They had become a talisman. A reminder that truth existed even when everything else was performance. She gave a speech midway through the party. Stood on the small deck overlooking the garden, microphone in hand. Someone had set up a sound system. Her voice carried across the yard, over the laughter and conversations and the gentle clink of glasses. She thanked everyone for coming. Said how blessed we were. How this baby was a miracle. How she couldn't wait to start this new chapter of our lives. She talked about community and love and how it takes a village. She quoted something about children being our future, our legacy, our greatest adventure. She said I was going to be the best father. That she couldn't imagine doing this with anyone else. That I had already proven myself by stepping up, by changing my life, by putting our family first. People clapped. Someone in the back, maybe my mother, cried actual tears. The applause washed over me like noise. I watched her face as she spoke. Tried to find the lie in her expression. But she believed it. In that moment, I think she actually believed her own story. Had lived it so completely that fiction and reality had merged into something she could inhabit without contradiction. When she finished, she handed the microphone to her friend who was serving as host. But I stepped forward before anyone else could speak. Can I say something? My voice carried across the yard. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. She looked confused. I never liked speeches. Never liked being the center of attention. But she smiled and handed me the microphone, her expression curious but not yet afraid. I pulled out the envelope. Felt its weight in my hands. Saw the exact moment her face changed. Just for a second. A flicker of panic that crossed her features like a shadow. Then she recovered. Smiled wider. Touched her stomach in that protective gesture she had perfected. I spoke calmly. Thanked everyone for coming. Said I had something to share. Something important. Something everyone deserved to know before they continued celebrating. The yard was silent now. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I unfolded the paper. Held it up so the letterhead was visible. Then I began to read. The baby she was carrying. The one we had celebrated for 7 months. The one I had rebuilt my life for. The one I had given up my dreams for. The one this entire party was honoring. It wasn't mine. I read the results out loud. Every clinical detail. Probability of paternity, 0%. Sample collected on such and such date. Analysis completed by a certified laboratory. Results verified and confirmed. The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. The string lights continued to twinkle above us, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated. She tried to speak. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Then sound did come, a strangled noise that might have been my name or might have been a denial or might have been nothing at all. She tried to explain. Reached for the paper in my hands. Said I didn't understand, that I was confused, that there had been a mistake. Her voice rose, became shrill, desperate. But I stepped back. Held the paper out of her reach. I looked at the faces surrounding us. My mother's expression of horror. My brother's grim satisfaction, because he had suspected all along. Her friends frozen in place, champagne glasses suspended halfway to their lips. The neighbors who probably wished they had declined the invitation. Someone's phone was recording. I could see the red light in my peripheral vision. This moment would live forever on the internet. This unraveling would become entertainment for strangers who would judge us both from the safety of their screens. She lunged for the paper again. Her movements frantic now, uncoordinated. The white dress that made her look angelic now seemed like a costume. A disguise. The belly that I had touched with reverence, that I had spoken to in the quiet hours of the night, suddenly felt like a prop in an elaborate con. "You're humiliating me," she screamed. Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this? Here? In front of everyone?" I felt nothing. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Not even sadness. Just emptiness where my future used to be. People started moving then. Her best friend rushed to her side, wrapped protective arms around her shoulders. Someone turned off the music that had been playing softly in the background. The festive atmosphere evaporated like morning dew under harsh sunlight. My mother approached me slowly, like I was a wild animal that might bolt. She didn't ask if it was true. She just took the paper from my hands, read it herself, then folded it carefully and put it in her purse. She squeezed my shoulder once, hard, then turned to address the crowd. "I think it's time for everyone to go home," she said quietly. But her voice carried authority. People listened. The guests dispersed quickly after that. No one knew what to say. Some avoided eye contact entirely. Others shot sympathetic glances my way or disgusted looks toward her. The gifts remained on the table, abandoned monuments to a celebration that had turned into a funeral. Her friends clustered around her like protective wolves. They shot accusations at me with their eyes. Monster. Abuser. Manipulator. How dare I expose her like this? How dare I weaponize her vulnerability? But I didn't stay to hear their defense of the indefensible. I walked away from the garden, from the white tents and string lights and three-tier cake that no one would eat now. Walked to my car parked 3 blocks away because there hadn't been enough space in the driveway for everyone invited to celebrate a lie. My phone started ringing before I reached the car. Her friends. Her mother. Numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it off. Removed the battery. Tossed it onto the passenger seat. I drove to my brother's house. He had left the party before I did, probably knew I would need somewhere to go. He opened the door before I could knock, handed me a beer without asking if I wanted one, and pointed to the guest room. "You did the right thing," he said. Did I? My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Hollow. She was going to let you raise another man's child. She was going to let you pay for everything, sacrifice everything, love a child under false pretenses. Yeah, you did the right thing. Then why do I feel like this? He didn't have an answer for that. Neither did I. I spent that night staring at the ceiling of his guest room. The bed was too soft. The house too quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat, my own breathing, the sound of everything I had built collapsing around me. My phone, when I finally turned it back on the next morning, showed 63 missed calls. Voicemails I would never listen to. Text messages that scrolled on, an endless litany of rage and justification and pleading. I deleted them all without reading. Because what could she possibly say that would change the fundamental truth? What explanation could exist for a deception this complete? The story was already spreading. Social media posts were appearing. The video from the party was making rounds. Some people sided with me. Others painted her as the victim. The comment sections became battlegrounds where strangers argued about morality and men's rights and women's autonomy and whether public humiliation was ever justified. I didn't participate. Didn't defend myself or attack her. Just watched from a distance as our private tragedy became public spectacle. That white dress she wore would haunt me for years. The way it caught the light. The way she looked so innocent, so pure, so convincing. A beautiful lie wrapped in expensive fabric. I wondered if she had practiced. If she had stood in front of a mirror rehearsing her speech, perfecting her smile, preparing for a performance she knew might be her last. Or maybe she believed it. Maybe the lie had become so integrated into her identity that she couldn't separate truth from fiction anymore. Maybe in her mind, the baby was mine because she wanted it to be, and desire was enough to reshape reality. The cake sat in my brother's refrigerator for 3 days before he threw it away. Neither of us could bear to eat it, but neither could bear to throw out something that had cost so much. Not money. Something more valuable than that. When I finally fell asleep that first night, I dreamed of the nursery. The yellow walls I had painted. The crib I had assembled with bleeding hands. The mobile that hung above it, meant to soothe a child who would never be mine to soothe. In the dream, the room was empty. Just yellow walls and morning light and the echo of promises that would never be kept. I woke up to my brother making breakfast. Pancakes. As if carbohydrates could fix anything. But I ate them anyway, because he had made them, because he was trying, because sometimes small kindnesses are all we have. The baby shower had been meant as a celebration. A communal acknowledgement of new life, new beginnings, new joy. Instead, it became the place where everything ended. Where the truth detonated and took everything with it. People would talk about it for months. The couple who imploded at their own baby shower. The father who wasn't a father. The mother who wasn't what she seemed. We became a cautionary tale. A story people told at parties to illustrate the dangers of trust, or deception, or moving too fast, or not asking enough questions. But we weren't a story. We were real people with real pain and real consequences that would ripple forward through time in ways we couldn't predict. She lost more than I did that day. Her reputation. Her friendships. Her carefully constructed image. The future she had orchestrated. But I lost something too. Not just the relationship, not just the child I had believed was mine. I lost the ability to trust easily. To believe without verification. To give my heart without keeping receipts. The baby shower was supposed to be a beginning. Instead, it was an ending. The most public, painful ending imaginable. And there was no cake sweet enough to make that taste any better. She called 63 times that night. I know the exact number because I counted each notification when I finally turned my phone back on. 63 attempts to reach me. 63 chances to explain, to justify, to beg, to threaten, to manipulate. I didn't answer a single one. The voicemails filled my inbox. I could see their durations without listening. Some were short, probably just crying or my name said over and over. Others were longer, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, one that lasted 9 minutes and 17 seconds. Monologues I would never hear. Explanations that came too late to matter. I deleted them all. Not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. Because part of me, some weak and foolish part, still wanted to believe her. Still wanted to hear the magic words that would make this all make sense. She showed up at my brother's house 3 days later. I was in the guest room when I heard the pounding on the front door. Aggressive. Desperate. The sound of someone who had run out of options. My brother answered. I could hear their voices through the wall. Hers shrill and demanding. His calm and immovable. I need to talk to him. Please. You don't understand. He humiliated me. He ruined everything. I need to explain. He doesn't want to see you. He's being unreasonable. This isn't fair. I'm pregnant. I'm vulnerable. He can't just abandon me like this. The baby isn't his. You need to leave. Her voice changed then. Became harder. Colder. The mask slipping completely. You're poisoning him against me. You never liked me. You always thought you were better than me. I don't think about you at all. Now get off my property before I call the police. I heard her scream. A wordless sound of fury and frustration. Then footsteps. A car door slamming. The squeal of tires as she peeled away from the curb. My brother came to check on me afterward. Found me sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. You okay? I nodded. I wasn't, but what else could I say? Her friends sent messages over the following days. Not to her phone, but to mine. Texts and social media messages and even emails to my work account that I had no idea how they obtained. How could you embarrass her like that? She's pregnant. She's vulnerable. You're a monster. You humiliated her publicly when she was at her most fragile. Real men don't do that. You could have handled it privately. You wanted to destroy her. I blocked them all. Every single one. Because they didn't know. They didn't know about the second phone, about Caleb, about the months of lies. They only knew her version, whatever story she had spun to paint herself as the victim. But my family stood by me. My brother who gave me a place to stay without making me feel like a burden. My mother who called every day just to make sure I was eating, sleeping, surviving. My aunts who sent care packages with homemade cookies and notes that said we love you and we're proud of you for being strong. They had seen the test results. They knew the truth. And they chose me. Caleb reached out 2 days after the shower. A single message on social media from an account I didn't know I was connected to. "I'm sorry, man. I didn't know she was lying to you too." I stared at those words for a long time before responding. "What do you mean?" "She told me the baby wasn't mine. Said it was some other guy's from before we met. Said she wanted to be with me but needed to handle the situation first." I believed her. The pieces started fitting together then. She had been playing multiple games simultaneously. Telling each of us different versions of the same lie. Keeping us separate so the stories wouldn't overlap and contradict. "How long?" I asked. 6 months. Maybe longer. I'm not even sure anymore. She had a way of making everything seem reasonable in the moment. Yeah. I knew exactly what he meant. For what it's worth, I ended it when I figured out what she was doing. I'm not interested in being part of whatever game she's playing. I appreciated the message more than he could know. At least one other person understood. At least I wasn't completely alone in this. The truth came out slowly over the following weeks. Not all at once, but in pieces. Fragments from different sources that I had to assemble like a puzzle. She wasn't 7 months pregnant like she claimed. She was 5 months. The timeline didn't match. She had been lying about the conception date, stretching it backward to include me in the window of possibility. The photos she posted on social media, the ones that showed her progression, were staged. Some were old photos from a friend's pregnancy that she cropped and filtered. Others used fake pregnancy bellies you could order online. Silicone prosthetics that looked real in photographs but felt wrong to the touch. That's why she flinched when I touched her stomach. Not because of some pregnancy sensitivity, but because she was afraid I would feel the edge of the prosthetic. Would realize that what I was touching wasn't flesh and life but latex and deception. She had been planning this from the start. From the moment she took that pregnancy test, she had calculated how to use it. How to secure stability. How to lock down someone who would provide the life she wanted. I was the easy target. The guy with dreams but no money. The one who could be molded and manipulated. The one who wanted so badly to believe in family that he would ignore every red flag. But I wasn't the only target. She had backups. Contingencies. Caleb and probably others. Men she kept in rotation in case one fell through. I felt like an idiot. Not just for believing her, but for being so predictable. For fitting so perfectly into her plan. But more than that, I felt free. The weight of obligation lifted. The future I had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure evaporated. I could breathe again. I started packing up the nursery. The one in the apartment we had moved into together, the one I was still paying for even though I no longer lived there. I went back one afternoon when I knew she would be out. Used the key I still had because neither of us had thought to change the locks. The nursery looked exactly as I had left it. Yellow walls. Assembled crib. Carefully organized shelves with books and toys and supplies for a baby that wasn't mine and might not even exist in the way I had been told. I disassembled the crib methodically. Each screw carefully removed and saved in a plastic bag even though I knew I would never use them again. Packed the sheets and blankets in 2 boxes. Took down the mobile. Then I painted over the yellow walls. White. Neutral. Erasing the evidence of the future that never was. It hurt. Even knowing everything, even understanding the depth of the deception, it hurt. Because for a few months, I had loved that child. Had imagined teaching them to ride a bike and helping with homework and attending school plays. Had built a relationship with someone who existed only in my imagination. I mourned that imaginary child more than I mourned the relationship. The apartment was too expensive for me to maintain alone. I broke the lease. Paid the penalty. Moved my remaining possessions into storage and stayed with my brother indefinitely. She kept the apartment. I found out later that someone else, maybe Caleb or maybe another man entirely, moved in within weeks. The nursery I had built became someone else's problem or fantasy or lie. I changed my number. Blocked her on every platform. Built walls where there used to be doors. People asked if I was okay. I said yes. And eventually, with enough repetition, it started to become true. The aftermath wasn't dramatic. No huge confrontation. No closure in the way movies suggest closure exists. Just slow distance. Just gradual healing. Just time doing what time does. But some nights I still woke up thinking I heard a baby crying. Would lie in the darkness of my brother's guest room listening for something that wasn't there. Something that had never been there. She tried to salvage it. Tried to control the narrative before it spiraled completely beyond her grasp. 3 days after the baby shower explosion, she posted on social media a long, tearful apology accompanied by a photo of her looking vulnerable and exhausted. No makeup. Hair pulled back. Eyes red from crying or from filters that made it look like crying. The post was carefully crafted. Every word chosen for maximum emotional impact. I want to address what happened. I made mistakes. I was confused. The stress of pregnancy made me act irrationally. I wasn't thinking clearly. I hurt someone I care about, and for that, I'm truly sorry. I'm asking for privacy during this difficult time as I work to make things right. She didn't mention the DNA test. Didn't mention Caleb or the other men or the fake belly photos or the elaborate web of lies. She made it sound like a misunderstanding. A moment of weakness. A forgivable lapse in judgment. The comments were split down the middle. Two sides forming battle lines in a war that had nothing to do with them. One camp defended her. We all make mistakes. Pregnancy hormones are real. Men don't understand the pressure women face. He should have handled it privately. Public humiliation is abuse. She deserves compassion, not judgment. The other camp called her out. Called her manipulative, calculating, predatory. Said I had every right to expose her. That private conversations wouldn't have worked with someone capable of this level of deception. That consequences were necessary. The argument raged in her comments section, then spread to other platforms. Twitter threads dissecting every detail. TikTok videos with people giving their hot takes. YouTube commentary channels making 20-minute videos analyzing the drama. We became content. Entertainment. A morality play for the digital age. Then the screenshots started circulating. Old posts she had forgotten about or thought were hidden. Messages she had sent to other guys. Conversations where she discussed her strategy, joked about how easy it was to manipulate certain types of men, compared notes with friends who were running similar scams. Someone found her old dating profiles where she had listed her ideal partner. Must be financially stable. Must want children. Must be willing to commit quickly. The criteria for a mark, not a soulmate. Her perfect image crumbled in real time. Each new revelation chipped away at the narrative she was trying to construct. The victim persona became impossible to maintain when faced with evidence of premeditation. Her friends, the ones who had sent me angry messages, started going quiet. Some deleted their comments. Others posted their own apologies, distancing themselves from her. She tried damage control. Posted that her account had been hacked. That the screenshots were fake. That people were targeting her because they hated women and couldn't stand to see a pregnant person succeed. But the internet is forever. And once doubt enters the conversation, trust becomes impossible to rebuild. She deleted everything a week later. Her Instagram account with thousands of carefully curated photos. Her Facebook with its timeline of fake milestones. Her Twitter with its performative wisdom. All of it gone in an attempt to escape the consequences. But the internet doesn't forget. Screenshots lived on. The video from the baby shower circulated endlessly. We became a cautionary tale that people shared with warnings. This is what narcissists do. This is why you always verify. This is what happens when you trust too easily. I didn't feel victorious watching her reputation disintegrate. I just felt tired. Exhausted by the drama and the attention and the constant rehashing of the worst moment of my life. My friends checked in regularly. Guys I hadn't talked to in years reaching out with messages of support. Some shared their own stories of being deceived or manipulated or used. Others just wanted to make sure I was surviving. I appreciated it more than I could express. The reminder that I wasn't alone. That other people had walked this path and emerged on the other side. One friend drove 3 hours just to take me to dinner. Didn't make me talk about it. Just sat with me in comfortable silence and paid for expensive steaks I barely tasted. That meant more than any words could have. I started therapy in week 3. Found a counselor who specialized in betrayal trauma and relationship abuse. I hadn't thought of it as abuse before, but she explained how manipulation and deception and gaslighting all fell under that umbrella. She told me it was normal to feel guilty even when you were the victim. Normal to question whether you could have done something differently. Normal to miss someone even when you knew they were toxic. The therapist asked me what I had learned from this experience. I sat with the question for a long time, watching the clock on her wall tick away the seconds while I searched for an answer that felt true. I learned that love isn't enough, I finally said. That love without honesty is just a beautiful lie. That someone can say all the right words and still be completely wrong for you. That I ignored red flags because I wanted to believe in something bigger than myself. She nodded like I had said something profound. Said that was a good place to start. Over the following weeks, we unpacked everything. My childhood need for family. My tendency to see the best in people. My fear of being alone that made me accept treatment I shouldn't have accepted. It was painful work. Excavating your own psychology, confronting the ways you contributed to your own pain. But it was necessary. I started rebuilding slowly. Not the life I had planned, but something new. Something authentic. My career, which I had abandoned for her, became my focus again. I picked up my camera for the first time in months. The weight of it felt familiar and foreign all at once. I went back to my abandoned photography project. The series on forgotten spaces where nature was reclaiming human structures. It felt metaphorical now in a way it hadn't before. The idea that life continues even after abandonment. That beauty can grow from ruins. I spent weekends exploring abandoned buildings. Warehouses with broken windows where light streamed through in dusty columns. Old theaters with velvet seats rotting into the floor. Factories where machinery rusted into sculptures of their former purpose. I photographed it all. The decay and the growth. The way ivy climbed through cracks in concrete. The way trees grew through rooftops. The stubborn persistence of life. The project evolved into something about resilience. About transformation. About how endings create space for new beginnings. A local gallery expressed interest. The owner looked through my portfolio and nodded slowly. Said the work had depth it didn't have before. Said pain, when channeled properly, created the most honest art. She offered me a show. Small. Just one wall in a group exhibition. But it was something. A beginning. I titled the series Reclamation. The photographs displayed with minimal captions. Just the locations and dates. Letting the images speak for themselves. The opening was small. Friends and family and strangers who came for the free wine. But people engaged with the work. Stood in front of the images and really looked. Asked questions about my process and inspiration. I didn't tell them about her. About the betrayal that led to these photographs. But somehow they felt it anyway. Saw the emotion beneath the composition. One woman stood in front of my favorite image for 10 minutes. It showed an old church with the roof caved in, morning light illuminating the interior, wildflowers growing where pews used to be. She turned to me finally. "This is about loss," she said. "But also hope." "Yes," I said. "That's exactly what it is." The show didn't make me famous. Didn't change my life in dramatic ways. But it reminded me that I existed outside of the trauma. That I could create something meaningful from pain. That felt like victory. Quiet and personal and real. I saw her 6 months later. Completely by accident in the produce section of a grocery store on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was choosing apples, examining them for bruises the way my mother taught me, when I felt someone staring. I looked up. And there she was. She was alone. No longer pregnant. The belly that may or may not have been real was gone, leaving behind only questions I would never ask. She looked smaller somehow. Like something essential had been removed and not replaced. She wore jeans and an oversized sweater. Hair pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup that I could see. She looked tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. The kind of tired that comes from carrying guilt and shame and consequences. She saw me too. Froze completely with a bag of salad greens in her hand. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened slightly. I watched her decide in real time whether to approach or flee. The grocery store continued around us. People pushing carts. A child crying somewhere in the cereal aisle. The overhead speakers playing a generic pop song about summer love. Life continuing as if this moment wasn't monumental for both of us. She approached first. Each step deliberate and hesitant. Like she was walking toward something dangerous that might lash out or disappear. She said my name quietly. Not a question. Just an acknowledgement. A confirmation that I was real and not a ghost conjured by her guilty conscience. I nodded. Didn't trust my voice yet. Didn't know what would come out if I opened my mouth. We stood there in uncomfortable silence. The apples felt heavy in my hands. I realized I was holding 3 of them, squeezing them probably too hard, using them as something to focus on besides her face. She apologized then. Not the performative social media kind. Not the defensive kind meant to deflect blame. The real kind. The kind that cracks your voice and makes your eyes water and costs something to say out loud. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't change what I did. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of it. The words hung between us. I wanted to feel something. Anger maybe. Or satisfaction at seeing her brought low. Or even sadness for what we had lost. But I felt nothing. Just a distant echo of old pain. Like pressing on a bruise that had healed and finding no tenderness remained. She continued when I didn't respond. Said she had lost everything. Her friends who finally saw through the lies and didn't want to be associated with someone capable of that level of manipulation. Her reputation that would follow her for years. Her family who were disappointed and hurt by her actions. The baby's real father, whoever that actually was, wanted nothing to do with her. Blocked her number. Moved to a different state. She was starting over alone in a city full of people who knew her story. She had moved back in with her mother temporarily. Was working retail to pay off debts. Had enrolled in community college to finish a degree she had abandoned years ago. Was trying, in small and unglamorous ways, to rebuild from rubble. I didn't know what to say to any of that. Didn't know if I was supposed to feel compassion or maintain hardness. Didn't know what response would feel authentic. She asked if I hated her. Her voice small. Childlike. Genuinely wanting to know the answer. I thought about it. Really considered the question instead of giving an easy response. No, I finally said. I just don't think about you anymore. It was true. In the beginning, she had consumed my thoughts. Every waking moment spent processing the betrayal and the lies and the loss. But time had done its work. She had faded from my daily consciousness. Become a chapter in my history instead of my present reality. She nodded slowly. Said she understood. That it was probably healthier that way. That she hoped I was happy. I'm getting there, I said. She asked if I was still doing photography. If I had continued with my project. She said she had heard through mutual acquaintances that I had a gallery show. That people had responded well to the work. She said she was glad. That I deserved success. The conversation felt surreal. 2 people who had once shared a bed and a future now making small talk like distant acquaintances. The intimacy completely evaporated. The connection severed so completely that we were essentially strangers who happened to know each other's histories. Are you okay? I asked. Not because I was responsible for her well-being, but because some part of me still saw her as human. Still recognized that everyone deserves basic kindness even after they've caused harm. I will be, she said. Eventually. I'm in therapy. Working through a lot of things. Trying to understand why I did what I did. Trying to become someone better. That's good, I said. And I meant it. We stood there for another moment. 2 people who used to share a life, used to plan a future, used to say I love you and mean it or pretend to mean it. Now strangers in a grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon. She turned to walk away first. Then stopped. Looked back over her shoulder. For what it's worth, I really did love you. At least I thought I did. I don't know if I'm capable of real love. But whatever I felt, it was the closest I've ever come. I didn't respond. Didn't know if that made it better or worse. If the lie was less painful if some part of it contained truth. She walked away then. Down the aisle past the organic vegetables and the fresh herbs and the refrigerated juices. I watched her go until she turned the corner and disappeared from view. I stood there holding my apples. Feeling nothing. No anger surging up. No sadness dragging me down. No relief or closure or any of the emotions I thought I might feel if I ever saw her again. Just nothing. Just the awareness that she existed somewhere in the world and that her existence no longer affected mine. And that was okay. That was, in fact, Exactly how it should be. I paid for my groceries. Drove home to the small apartment I had rented for myself. Made dinner. Edited photographs. Called my mother. Lived my life. And she wasn't part of it anymore. Wasn't even a shadow or an echo. Just a person I used to know who taught me something important about trust and boundaries and resilience. The encounter didn't change anything. But it confirmed something. I had survived. I had moved forward. I had become someone who could stand in front of the person who broke him and feel nothing except distant well wishes. That felt like healing. Quiet and unglamorous and real. I'm doing better now. Not in the dramatic way stories usually end, with everything perfectly resolved and tied with a bow. But better in the small, accumulating ways that actually matter. Better in ways I can feel when I wake up without dread. When I make coffee without remembering her morning rituals. When I exist in my own life instead of the ghost of our shared one. My photography project got featured in a local gallery. Not the big prestigious one downtown that every artist dreams about, but a small community space run by an older woman who believes art should be accessible. She gave me an entire wall. 12 photographs arranged in a sequence that told a story about decay and growth and resilience. The opening was modest. 20 or 30 people were drinking cheap wine from plastic cups. But they looked at the work. Really looked. Stood in front of the images and let them speak. Asked thoughtful questions about composition and meaning and what inspired me to photograph abandoned spaces. I didn't tell them about her. About the betrayal that led me back to photography. But several people commented that the work had emotion in it. Depth. One man said the images felt like grief transformed into something beautiful. That's exactly what they were, I realized. Grief that had been processed and channeled and given new form. Pain that had been acknowledged and then released into something larger than itself. A local magazine wrote a small piece about the exhibition. 3 paragraphs and 1 photograph. But it was enough. Other galleries started reaching out. Small commissions. Nothing that would make me rich, but enough to supplement my income. Enough to make photography feel like a career again instead of an abandoned dream. I started dating again. Slowly. Carefully. Like someone learning to walk after an injury. I created profiles on apps and swiped through faces and tried to determine who might be trustworthy from a handful of photos and a bio. It was exhausting at first. Every conversation is analyzed for red flags. Every inconsistency noted and catalogued. Every late response triggering suspicion that I knew was probably unfounded but couldn't quite silence. I'm more cautious now. I ask questions. I notice things. I don't rush into commitment or belief or promises that feel too good to be true. I verify. I wait. I trust slowly instead of immediately. But I'm not closed off. I haven't let bitterness calcify into permanent walls. I'm just wiser. More discerning. More aware that love requires both vulnerability and boundaries. I went on dates. Some good. Some are terrible. Some that were fine but lacked chemistry. I learned that being alone was better than being with someone wrong. That companionship for its own sake wasn't worth compromising myself. There was one woman. A photographer too. We met at an art supply store, both reaching for the same brand of photo paper. We laughed about it. Got coffee. Talked for 3 hours about light and composition and the ethics of photographing vulnerable subjects. She didn't ask about my past immediately. Didn't pry or push. Just let me reveal myself at my own pace. And when I finally told her the story, the abbreviated version that hit the major points without dwelling on the pain, she just nodded. That sounds really hard, she said. I'm glad you survived it. Not I'm sorry or how could she or any of the dramatic responses people usually offered. Just acknowledgement that I had endured something difficult and come out the other side. We're taking it slow. Coffee once a week. Texts that are warm but not obsessive. No declarations or promises or rushing toward a future we haven't built yet. Just presence and honesty and the quiet comfort of being with someone who sees you clearly. Someone asked me recently if I regretted it. The relationship. The betrayal. The pain. All of it. It was my brother who asked. We were sitting on his back porch drinking beer and watching the sun set. He had let me stay with him for 4 months without ever making me feel like a burden. Without ever asking when I would leave or making me feel unwelcome. He deserved honesty. I thought about it. Really thought about it instead of giving the easy answer. And I said no. He raised an eyebrow. Waited for me to explain. Because that experience taught me something important, I said. It taught me that I'm stronger than I thought. That I can rebuild after everything falls apart. That I don't need someone else to complete me. That I'm enough on my own. He nodded slowly. Raised his beer bottle in a small toast. To being enough, he said. To being enough, I echoed. The nursery is now my studio. The spare bedroom in my new apartment. The pale yellow walls are covered in photographs now. Prints in various sizes showing abandoned churches and overgrown factories and nature reclaiming human spaces. The crib is gone, replaced by equipment and light stands and a desk where I edit and plan and create. I turned the space meant for a lie into something real. Something mine. Something that represents who I actually am instead of who someone else wanted me to be. And that feels like victory. The quiet kind that doesn't announce itself but settles deep in your bones. I don't know what the future holds anymore. I used to think I had it mapped out. Marriage and children and a house with a yard and a life that looked like everyone else's definition of success. But that map burned. And now I'm navigating without one. Maybe I'll fall in love again. Maybe I'll find someone who values honesty as much as I do now. Maybe I'll build a family someday with someone who wants to build it with me for real reasons instead of calculated ones. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll live alone and create art and find fulfillment in work and friendships and the small joys of a life lived authentically. Maybe family will mean something different than I once thought it did. But whatever happens, I'll face it as myself. Not as someone's backup plan. Not as someone's safety net. Not as a mark or a target or a convenient solution to someone else's problem. Just as me. With all my flaws and strengths and hard-won wisdom. And that's enough. More than enough. Everything. I look at the photographs on my studio wall sometimes. The abandoned spaces filled with light and life. The way nature refuses to give up even in the harshest conditions. The way beauty emerges from decay when you know how to look for it. That's what I did. What I'm still doing. Looking for beauty in the ruins. Creating light in spaces that were meant to stay dark. Growing something real in soil that was poisoned by lies. The story doesn't end with dramatic closure. There's no final confrontation where she admits everything and begs forgiveness. No moment of perfect healing where all the pain disappears. Just gradual improvement. Just small victories accumulating. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I survived and became someone stronger because of it. I still think about her sometimes. Wonder if she really is getting better or if that was another performance. Wonder if she ever truly understands what she did. Wonder if she carries guilt or just resentment at being caught. But mostly I don't think about her at all. She's a chapter in my history. An important one that taught me crucial lessons. But not the whole story. Not even close. The story is still being written. And I'm the one holding the pen now. Creating plot twists and character development and a narrative that belongs entirely to me. That's the real beginning. Not falling in love or having a family or checking boxes on someone else's list of life milestones. The beginning is choosing yourself. Building a life that feels true. Becoming whole without needing someone else to fill the gaps. And I'm finally there. Finally at the beginning I didn't know I was searching for. Finally home.